Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. So welcome to another engaging episode of The OT is In, where we dive deep into the layers of human experience and perception. I'm your host, Sarah Collins, and today we're wrapping up our May series with a special focus on interoception, the often overlooked sense that helps us understand the internal state of our bodies. We've had a fascinating month with exploring this topic with experts like Kara Kosinski, Caroline Santangelo, and Elizabeth Sauter, who've illuminated various facets of interoception, from defining it to enhancing it through outdoor activities and linking it to social emotional learning. In this episode, I'll be sharing personal insights and examples from my own experience homeschooling my children, shedding light on how interoception develops from infancy through childhood and how it can significantly impact our well-being. We'll discuss practical strategies that can be used at home to nurture this sense and reflect on the challenges and successes that my children have faced in their interoceptive growth journey, including the influence of modern technology like screens. So join us as we dissect this topic better so that we can understand how we can help our children and ourselves fine-tune this internal compass. Hey, and welcome to another episode of The OT is In, where we delve into the fascinating world of human experience and perception. I'm your host, Sarah Collins, and today we are going to embark on a journey into the realm of interoception within the homeschool. We'll talk about how the sense influences development and how we, in turn, can use the homeschool to help our children understand themselves. So prior to this episode, there are three others that will be linked in the show notes. In episode 13, Kara Kosinski helped us to understand the definition of interoception as the sense that helps us perceive the internal state of our bodies. It allows us to sense signals such as hunger, thirst, heartbeat, breathing, temperature, and even emotions. Think of it as the body's internal GPS, providing constant feedback to our brains about what's happening within us. In episode 14, Caroline Santangelo provided ideas on ways to support interoception through outdoor experiences and movement. And then in episode 15, Elizabeth Sauter explained the connection between interoception and social emotional learning. Again, all of these can be found in the show notes. But today, I'm going to provide some specific examples on how we can address interoception in the homeschool using my kids as an example. All of them have agreed to allow me to share, but as usual, the goal of this isn't that you feel pressure to do exactly as I have done, but to consider the different ways that we've addressed interoception over the years and different developmental stages. So interoception, often referred to as the hidden sense, plays a crucial role in our lives, yet it remains relatively obscure compared to our other senses like sight, hearing, and touch. In fact, when I was in graduate school, we did not even study interoception, and I graduated in 2008. So all of my learning has happened since that time. Side note, your occupational therapist should be doing continuing education and continue to learn about new research as time goes on. There are some great episodes back on episode number 1, 2, and 3 that talk about the role of occupational therapy and even questions to ask your occupational therapist. I'll also link those in the show notes. So let's go back to what exactly is interoception and how does it develop over time? So let's explore. So like many aspects of human development, the sense of interoception has an impact early in life. Even before birth, the fetus is capable of sensing changes in its internal environment. And then as babies enter the world, they start to develop a rudimentary awareness of their bodily sensations. Most babies cry when they're hungry, tired, or feel pain, and then later when their diapers are wet or soiled. And relatively soon, parents can typically begin to decipher between their cries based on need. This can only happen if a baby has some interoceptive awareness. So in infancy, caregivers play a crucial role in helping babies regulate their internal states. Through feeding, comforting, and nurturing, infants learn to associate these sensations with their specific needs. So, for example, as time goes on, the sensation of hunger prompts them to seek food, while discomfort would lead to seeking comfort from a caregiver. So you see how they begin to decipher themselves. As children grow, their interoceptive abilities become more refined. They learn to distinguish between different internal sensations and develop a more nuanced understanding of their bodily needs. This development is influenced by various factors like genetics, environment, and even early experiences. So here's the biggest difference in the 3 of my children. My oldest went to daycare at a center starting at 6 weeks of age until she was about 4 years old. She was there from 6:30 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. 4 days a week. So sure, we had input on her eating schedules, her sleep schedules, and potty training. And in fact, I vividly remember talking about a noisemaker that was signaled by her own movement to help her to nap. And I also remember pumping in the middle of the night to be sure that she had enough milk so she would not projectile vomit formula everywhere. My girl did not take any formula. So she soon began to eat, use the bathroom, and even sleep on the schedule based on daycare. Now, over the years, she has had more difficulty noticing her hunger, her thirst, and is more resistant to utilizing her own coping skills when upset or even fatigued. She can tell me ways to help herself, but she just does not do it as easily. So have you ever known that a walk outside or a physical activity would help your child regulate, yet they won't do it? Ever feel frustrated by that? So same, you're not alone in that, but the frustration did somewhat lower for me when we realized that her self-awareness, which directly impacts self-advocacy, was lacking. In fact, there's growing recognition of the importance of interoception in promoting overall well-being. So research suggests that individuals with a strong interoceptive awareness tend to have better emotional regulation, empathy, and decision-making skills. So how can we cultivate our interoceptive abilities? Well, like any skill, practice plays a key role. For her, once we started homeschooling, she also started karate, specifically Tang Sudo. So the movements and the forms required attention to the way her body was moving and increased her proprioception and body awareness. These are directly linked to interoception. We also had very specific conversations about water intake and nutrition, using the need for hydration and health during karate classes. Around the same time in 2017, we were beginning intensive vision therapy and recognizing how my son's sensory awareness affected participation in some activities that he needed and wanted to do. So you can hear more about that journey in episode 8, which I'll also link in show notes. I'm laughing because I just realized how many of these blogs and prior episodes are going to be linked in the show notes. So we began using the zones of regulation program with him. So this would help him recognize if his body needed stimulation because he felt, and these are in his terms, groggy or sluggish, which he called blue. 2, he felt A-okay and ready to focus, which was green. Or 3, like he needed to move because he was feeling frustrated or work was really hard. That was his yellow. Or 4, very overwhelmed and angry, which was his red. I used to carry a small little Lego figure in my purse and a car with 4 studs on the head, one for each color. And if I was noticing that he appeared to be in one of the zones, I would show him and give him my reasons, saying something like, I see because you're kicking my seat that you are feeling really angry or probably in the red zone. He actually didn't really kick my seat very often, but I'm struggling with coming up with one off the top of my head. That would be one of those things. Or I see because your eyes are having a hard time looking at me. Now, he's typically very good at eye contact, that you are feeling overwhelmed. Or I see because your head is lying on the table and you're having a hard time getting started, that you might be sluggish or blue. And I would use this little Lego figure as a picture or a tangible object to help. Sometimes he would do this same thing on his own. So using this, we change the sequence of our homeschool day to include more movement. We noticed he spent less time in yellow and red. He was always rarely blue, and his red was never explosive, but more frustration with himself. Our homeschool day began then to have more time where he would get up and have freedom to move whatever he needed to do. Then we would do a morning time together, then break for some chores so that he had that functional movement, but able to participate in heavy work, but know it was for a reason and the whole family was doing it at the same time. Then kind of head back into some more, anything that we would have to do sitting down would come at that point. Is your child constantly fearful or disruptive, or do they crave routine or seem overly sensitive? It might be time to consider the world of sensory processing. This world, it's confusing and it can be hard to pin down. But you are the best advocate for your child, and I know you're determined to be equipped with knowledge to help support your child. After all, you are here listening to the OT is in podcast. But there is more than this one sense, and I know you want more than anything for your child to experience peace and confidence so that they can thrive. The Sensory Balanced Focus Group combines the best of both worlds, the latest research and insights into sensory processing with tips, tools, and strategies to implement straight away into your homeschool, plus a community to work through it with. I hope you'll join the Sensory Balanced Homeschool Focus Group today. You can find it in the shop at homeschoolot.com, or more specifically, homeschoolot.com/shop/sensory-focus-group. Now, back to the show. My youngest son has only ever been homeschooled. So we started homeschooling when he was 1, and he's been around these terms, the zones of regulation, since that time. In fact, he could identify his zones, I feel like, since he could talk. And each time that we've studied anatomy, which has been on a 3-year cycle, we've drawn our bodies and practiced body scans. So we would do things like, how does your head feel? How does your stomach feel? We listened to vocabulary, specifically, adjectives. You read lots of books about adjectives and then would really start to use them. And I realized how well his vocabulary has grown from things like, I feel good, I feel bad, to words like feel jittery or tingly, or I feel spectacular. Now I'm kind of interested to see if his vocabulary returns to good, or even fine, bruh, mumbled as he gets older. His older brother does that now. So another thing about this kiddo, though, is that he is more interested in screens, specifically video games, than my other 2 kids. So I can often see him downstairs, literally bouncing on the couch. Like, I'm talking the whole couch moves back, which I know is a way of increasing his proprioception to calm his body and his nervous system. So I need to be clear here. I am not totally against screens. In fact, I run a business using social media as one of the main ways to interact and to support families. But I'm also very aware of the difficulties and delays in interoceptive awareness and in relationship to screens. So with interactive screens, like with video games or iPads, the eyes, the brain, and the body all must process information. So screen brightness, quick movements, and colors that represent 3-dimensional images on a 2-dimensional screen can contribute to this hyperarousal and even to a fight or flight response. So in a fight or flight response, less blood flow goes to the prefrontal cortex, which is where we evaluate our emotions and make decisions on action. So anecdotally, we have noticed more meltdowns, confusion even about hunger and thirst, and absolutely an effect on attention after video games. In fact, as this episode airs, we will just be finishing a 3-week screen fast inspired by the book Reset Your Child's Brain by Victoria L. Dunkley, with the main goal being that we all build self-awareness of our bodies with and without screens. So guys, isn't it interesting that our children literally don't know life without interactive screens? My husband and I were speaking recently, and we are one of the last that I truly remember when a computer came into my home. Like, I was 6 years old. And so before that, had a TV only, and then a computer starting in 1986. I made it all the way through college without a cell phone. We had lovely pagers, which we would figure out the codes to and send messages to our friends. In fact, I even had to take the desktop computer to college with me. But so we did not have any of this growing up, but our children don't know their brains without screens and without interactive screens specifically. So they wouldn't know if that screen is impacting their ability to pay attention, to understand their own emotion, to focus, or to know even their own hunger and thirst. So in conclusion, interoception is a fascinating aspect of human perception that deserves more attention and exploration. But by understanding its role in our lives and nurturing its development, we can cultivate a greater self-awareness, emotional resilience, and overall well-being. So not every child will develop this skill in the same way. Some might need more physical movement to tune into their bodies. Some need specific programs or curriculums. And some really benefit from incorporating in science like anatomy and understanding their own bodies. So that's all for today's episode. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of interoception. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe and to leave a review. And until next time, stay curious and keep exploring. Thank you all for listening to the OT is In podcast. For episodes 13 through 16, we've been discussing a lesser known sense, interoception. But some would say that it's actually the most important sense. It's the foundation for self-awareness. It's the ability to identify, access, understand, and respond to the patterns of our internal signals. And understanding this sense is also the basis for communicating about our emotions and our needs. To help start the conversation with your kids, I've created a really simple question guide, even with some hints for Gestalt language processors. So click on the show notes and it'll pop up for you. Thank you for being here. It's not lost on me that there are many places that you can spend your time, yet you're choosing to be here with me, Sarah Collins from the Homeschool OT. I'll see you next week.